Okay, I don't know what got into me, but I started, just really messing around with some hair wing patterns. I really like the looks of a Humpy and a Royal Wulff. So what we've got for you right now is a Royal Wulff pattern, um, and we're going to try to keep it as original as possible with using modern advances as well. In my opinion, a Royal Wulff is all about the wings. So as you see here, I've got some calf body hair wings, and calf body hair is notorious for being difficult to work with, and you have to really watch your local shop to find really good patches of calf body hair. And so I've got some examples here that I'm going to use when I show you this fly, so that we can kind of show you how to gauge between good patches and bad patches and how to make both usable. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is I've got an Allen D102 hook in the vise. It's a size 10, and I've got some UTC 70 in red. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dress the hook right about to there, and I'm going to want my wings to come up off the fly about right here. Okay, so the way that I gauge is at about 2 eye lengths back on the hook, if that makes sense. So here's the length of the eye right here, and so one, 2. That's about where I'm going to put the wing of this Royal Wulff. Alright, so I've got some calf body hair, and this might be kind of hard to see, but you can see this. These fibers are very full, long fibers. They're relatively the same length when you pull it up. And this is what I'd call a premium patch of calf body hair. I had to search high and low to find this. And this is the patch of hair that I've been working with. Actually, this fly that I showed you right here was tied with this patch of hair. Now this patch of hair isn't anywhere near the quality. And what I mean by that is when I pull up some of the fibers, you'll see that barely any come up. And so that's the trick, is gathering and stacking enough of this calf body hair to make a really full wing, especially on a big fly. So what I've done essentially is take some of the calf body hair, a whole clump of it, and just like deer hair, when you cut this off, there are going to be a lot of really short fibers in the calf body hair. And so the short fibers you need to pull out, use your comb to really brush those out, and then stack it in your stacker, pull out another clump, and keep stacking those together until you have enough. With this more full piece of calf body hair, I only had to do that about twice to get enough to make a size 10 wing. So it's all about just stacking and restacking your hair until it comes out nice and even. Another trick to the trade is a good hair stacker. Now we recently got these hair stackers on our site. This is a large hair stacker. Let's see. Yeah, and the other thing about this hair stacker is it's aluminum and unfinished, so there's no static that's going to build up. We have them listed on our site. Really good tool, because with the wide diameter here also, it allows all the hair to kind of separate, and it gets them really nice and stacked down. So very highly recommended that you get a wider hair stacker. You can get them from us if you want to start doing hair wing flies. Okay, so as I pull the hair out of the stacker, I want to pull it out so that the tips are facing the front of the fly. And you see how nice and even those are, and how wide those are when they stacked up. So it's a pretty healthy clump of hair. Okay, I'm just going to measure the body of the fly, and that's about how long the wing is going to be. So I'm just going to pinch right down where my tie-in point is going to be and tie that wing in, and give it several wraps. Make sure it's nice and tied down tight. So then I'm going to pull those wings up and see if that's going to be long enough, and it looks like that's about right where I want to be. So I typically would take, you know, if you've got a big hair wing up here, you typically want to cut that at an angle, but I'm not going to do that on this fly necessarily, because I'm going to tie in an elk hair tail and those butts are going to butt right up against the base of this wing. You'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to come in here and just cut it flat off, just like that. Okay, so the next step now is to take your thread in front of the wing, pull those back, and start building up. I mean, this isn't super critical that you get the wings to stand straight up by doing this, but it kind of gives it a head start at least. Okay, so now I've got the wing kind of coming up. At this point, I'm going to take my thumbnail and kind of push it back, and that will split my wings pretty much. So if you see what I was seeing there, if you put your fingernail back and push it in, it will split those wings for you. Or you can just take a bodkin and come in and find about the midpoint of those wings. And you're going to have to forgive me for sticking my fingers so much into this, but there's really no other way to do it. So I've got one of the wings to the side. I'm going to pull the other wing over, and it looks like the one that I've got closest to you is a little bit thicker than the other one. So I'm going to release some of those fibers and look at how my wings are now. They look pretty good that way. So the next step is, and if you didn't really tie them down tight, you're going to pull a bunch of them out, is I'm going to take them and I'm just going to kind of hold them back like this for a little bit. And that will kind of bend them back so that when you wrap them individually, it will be a little bit easier. So I've got them somewhat separated. Then I'm going to take my thread, let's see if I can do this showing you on video, and I'm going to wrap, okay, I'm going to wrap around each individual wing, kind of like the way you would do a parachute post. So if you get the gist of it, I've done one wing here, and now I'm going to come around the other wing as well. So I've got both the wings split, but you can see they're kind of splayed out too far and going forward. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your thread so that it's right at the top of this little miniature parachute, and now I'm going to pull it tight and wrap down over the body on both of these wings. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of pull it into place. So just do that a couple times, and then help it with your fingers until they're right about where they want to be. Now I've found that no amount of thread wraps is really going to make these wings stay that way. So we're going to throw a little bit of super glue on the base of these wings. Okay, so I've got just a little bit of super glue. I'm going to put it at the base of each wing and rub it in the center. Just kind of move it all around, and that should lock those wings pretty much in that position. So if I take the fly out of the vise and show you, we're at a pretty good 45-degree angle on those wings. Okay, so that's really the most difficult part of this whole fly. If you get the wings right, really you can tie Royal Wulffs pretty quickly. So I've got my fibers stacked and ready to go, and my tail's going to be roughly the length of the body. So I'm going to find my spot and just tie those in. You don't want to use too tight of wraps or it'll flare it too much. Now this is what I was talking about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have those elk hair fibers butt right up against the calf body. So I'm going to stick my scissors in here and cut it roughly so when I wrap my thread, it's just going to cover up that gap. And there'll be a little bit of a difference, but I can usually make that up with thread. Now if I really cranked down with my thread, it would just flare the fibers and it wouldn't look very good. So I kind of use loose fibers until I get all the way up to the calf body hair. And then I crank it down. Now we flared it anyway. So we can cover that all up with peacock and thread. And so also for peacock, you kind of have to select your peacock accordingly. Not every piece of peacock is going to be the same. And so I'm using some of the fibers right off the peacock eye, mostly because they're right about the length that I'm looking for this fly. If you go further down on the peacock stem, your barbs off of the peacock herl get a little bit larger. So you don't want too big of barbs on this fly. I've got 2 pieces of peacock, and I'm going to tie them in. There's going to be a red band in this fly right in the middle. So I'm going to tie them in right about here. Then I'm just going to wrap forward. Alright, for the band of this fly, you know, a lot of people will use floss or things like that. It looks really good, but with this flat UTC thread, you can just unspin it. You can spin it counterclockwise if you're right-handed, and it will go perfectly flat, and you can just create your band out of it. Alright, now you can either use the same peacock you had before or cut 2 more fibers off, and I'm going to attach them right here, right behind the wings. Do the same thing I did up front. The other key that I always struggled with was the hackle. I always looked at the flies in the fly boxes or in the fly shops, and I always wondered how they got the hackle so dense on some of these attractor patterns. And I realized that number one, they're probably using the best hackle that the producers make. And then number two, they're probably using 2 strands of that hackle. So on this fly, I'm going to use 2 hackles just to make it really thick. What I'm using is a Whiting Euro hackle. It's just a saddle hackle that has it's known for just really thin stems. That's why I like using it so much. So I'm just going to take 2 of these, just brown color, and I'm going to tie those in so that they're both stacked up the same direction. So if you were to look at this, the shiny side is facing you and the dull side is facing me. That way when I wrap those hackles, I'm going to wrap them at the same time, and the fibers are going to kind of concave the same direction. If these hackles aren't facing the same direction, they're going to kind of cross up, and you're going to trap a whole bunch of fibers when you wrap this forward. Okay, what you can do is you can wrap these both at the same time, but what I'm actually going to do is just wrap them individually. The reason I do that is because sometimes the hackle, if the fibers aren't exactly the same, they can kind of twist up and get all funky. So I'm just going to wrap one feather up through, 3 or 4 wraps behind the wings, and then same number of wraps up to the head. I'm going to wrap that off, and then as I go up through with my second feather, it'll start to get a lot more full, as you can see here. Alright, so that's a pretty full hackle. Did trap down one little fiber here. Now, one of the things that we're going to show you is one of the products that we're going to have in our site as well, is this fancy whip finisher. It's got a wooden handle and then a blade on the end of it. So after you do your whip finish, you can just stick your blade up in the fly and cut it off. Anyway, it's a Royal Wulff. It's not the easiest fly to get to look good, but it's kind of a classic if you're into fishing those types of patterns. Hopefully these tips will help you to tie a cleaner Royal Wulff.